Hey everybody, I'm in the kitchen today and I am glad to be here because I'm going to be talking about fermentation. Um, Making sauerkraut basically. I'm not going to be making a typical sauerkraut though. I'm not making the kind that my grandma made because Granny would take a big crock and she would put her cabbage and her salt and her water in and she would leave it in a cool, dark place and she'd just use it as she wanted it. And I think that it got a little bit too sour. So over the years, as I got interested in making my own ferments, anything from pickles to fermented carrots or green beans or cabbage in this instance, I've kind of decided that I would rather do a quick ferment and then stick it in a really cold place like the refrigerator to slow down the process and keep it, well, it's not so sour. Some sauerkrauts will lock your jaws up. Well, who likes that? I don't want that. So I like this because I can control what goes in it. I can control the amount of time that the ferment happens. And overall, it just makes for a product that I like and that, well, my people like because they eat it and don't complain. So go figure. Anyway, if you're wondering what I'm talking about when I say a ferment, well, that's basically what happens when you pickle something without using vinegar. We're going to be using nature and the natural process of breaking down, in this case, cabbage to make a product that is preserved. I have not invented the wheel, trust me. This method has been around for ages because it's just a method to preserve food. And back in the day, well, you had to preserve food or you'd starve to death. So you had to preserve it while you had it so you could eat in the winter, wouldn't starve to death. Anyway, we're not going to starve to death today, I'll tell you that. But I still like to make my own sauerkraut. So I'm going to jump in and show you exactly what's going on. All you'll need is a container to put your kraut in. You're going to need water. You're going to need non-iodized salt. You can use canning salt. You can use pickling salt. I like to use this. This is kosher salt. It just doesn't contain iodine. Now, pickling salt and canning salt, they don't contain anti-caking agents. It's just straight up salt. This does have a bit of an anti-caking agent. It just keeps it from sticking together into big pieces. But I always have success with it. And so I don't mind using it because I know that it works. And I know that it doesn't have iodine in it because iodine inhibits the ferment. We don't want that. We want something that's going to ferment nice. Iodine will not let anything ferment very nice. I think it probably kills something in it because iodine is, it's a natural compound, but it's not something that we want in our ferment. So, kosher salt and cabbage. This was 3 great big heads. Now, you're going to notice that I'm just kind of willy-nilly about measurements because I just go with it and I figure out what I'm going to need by taste. You might not be able to do that yet, but you will one day. But I'll walk you through and I will give you the measurements to the best of my ability, okay? So this jar is a 1-gallon glass container. It's got a lid on it that doesn't have a grommet or a seal, and it would let the air in and out. And that's kind of what you need. In order for a ferment to take place, you've got to have it in an oxygen-free container because the ferment happens in an anaerobic situation. I know it's science. It's science in the kitchen. The kitchen's full of science, y'all, and you can't get away from it. But anaerobic means simply organisms that thrive where there's no oxygen. Now, I am not an anaerobic organism because I like to breathe and I like oxygen. But the little creatures that are going to break down this cabbage, they don't need oxygen. And so we like to cover them with water and put a weight on top of them to always keep them submerged, to keep the oxygen out of them so that it'll ferment and turn into nice crunchy sauerkraut. I'm not going to use this container though because I've got more cabbage than room. So this is good for next time. Or I might throw some green beans in this container and ferment them. But for our ferment today, I'm just going to be using this bucket. Now let me move things around here so we get my bucket. This is a food grade plastic bucket. And that simply means that it is accepted by the FDA as a container to use around food products. It's a 5-gallon bucket. It's got the little label on that says, I am food grade container. And it just means that there's no BPAs or anything that will leach out from the plastic into whatever it is you're preparing. And that's important because, I mean, we're all going to die one day, but I hope it's not from plastic leaching out into my food. Anyway, it's the easiest thing in the world, y'all. And I'm going to show you. So I'm going to take some of this cabbage that I have already processed. Now, I used Cuisinart because, well, I've done it before where I chopped up my cabbage by hand. I just couldn't get a consistent thin slice. I'd have big slices and little slices. And, well, it was not fun to eat that particular batch because I was having to chew a lot more than if I had used Cuisinart. I used the Cuisinart on setting number 3 on the shaving disc. This stuff is going to be gold. It's going to be awesome because it's going to firm up crispy and delightful, and I can hardly wait. So I'm going to put half of this in my bucket. See, I'm just shaking some in my bucket. Woo. And turn around. Now I want to take some salt, and like I said, I'm using kosher salt. I know this is actually 8 quarts measures up in these buckets, 8 quarts of cabbage. Your salt ratio usually is going to be 2 or 3% brine, and that just means the water and salt mixture combined together to form the liquid that will cover your cabbage for the ferment to happen. That's just the ratio of the salt to water. I like to go by taste. And it works. I mean, if you want to be scientific and use the measure method, knock yourself out. Not up in here, sister or brother, because who has time? I just do by taste and it works every time. So I know that I'm going to use probably at least 6 tablespoons for this big batch of cabbage. So I'm going to take 2 at a time here, 2 tablespoons at a time. And they were heaping tablespoons. And I have just sprinkled them over the cabbage in the bottom of this bucket. And now I have got this handy dandy little utensil. It's what, I don't know what you call it, but you break up hamburger meat or sausage or whatever in the pan when it's frying so you get little bitty crumble bits. I find that it works amazing to bruise the cabbage. And bruising the cabbage just gives it a head start for breaking down all the microbes that exist in nature on the cabbage. It's going to help them have access to all the ooey gooey parts of the cabbage because I'm going to bruise it and break it down. And the salt helps break it down too because it will draw some of the moisture out of the cabbage. And well, it just all works. Trust me, it sounds complicated, but it's really not. But I want you to know what we're doing, so that's why I'm throwing in the information that is scientific. So anyway, this is not scientific. This is just a plastic utensil. And I'm going to just smack it around a little bit like this. Give it a few whop whops. And all it does really is it just helps to incorporate the salt a little bit. And it starts breaking it down. It's kind of like if you have, strawberries and you sprinkle sugar on them and stir them up and then you leave them for a while. You come back and there's a lovely syrup made out of that sugar. The maceration process causes the sugar to release the juices in the strawberry. That's where you get the lovely syrup. Well, that's kind of what we're doing here, but we're not making syrup. We're just trying to get the salt to break down the cabbage just a little bit. Now, it hasn't done a whole lot to it. I mean, you see, I didn't cut it up anymore. I'm just getting the salt in. So, go at it again. Add the rest of this. cabbage. Go at it with 2 more tablespoons of salt. Woo-hoo. Yep. Hit it up a little bit with this. Stir it around a little bit. Yep. Do it again. I don't put flavorings or not flavorings really, seasonings. I don't put seasonings in my sauerkraut because, well, I'm a purist. I just like it straight up. But if you wanted to, you could throw in some caraway seeds. You could put peppercorns. You could throw mustard seeds in here. If you wanted to put granulated garlic, you could. Granulated onion. You could even slice up onion and include it in here with it, and it would probably be great. I've never tried it, but be brave. Step out of the box, y'all, and try something different. And if it works, let me know. If it doesn't work, I didn't tell you to do it. Anyway, all right. Boom, boom, boom. 1 more load of the cabbage going in. And let's go with 2 more. So that would be a total of 8, I suppose, tablespoons. But I know that it's not too much because we're going to use a lot of water to cover this. And that's basically it. I have popped it down. I have stirred it up. I have kind of mushed it together like that. Just breaking down the tissues in the cabbage. Boom. Okay. So now all we need is water. We're going to cover this with water. And you have to cover the cabbage. The water has to go above the level of the cabbage, or else it'll spoil on top. Anything that's not completely under the water, well, it's going to rot. We don't want that. Let's see. I need just a little bit more water, so let me fill my bucket up. Okay, so I went and got 2 more quarts of water, and it's just going to go straight in. So that's a total of 6 quarts of water to cover this cabbage, and that's perfect. And I'm going to taste of the brine because I want to make sure that it's salty enough. Let me grab me a spoon. Stir it around just a little bit to loosen up some salt. And I'm going to taste of it. Just the water. I'm not going to be eating the cabbage. It's hardly salty at all. That just tells me that I'm going to need to put in a considerable amount of salt. So I'm going to fill my little salt cellar back up. And we'll go at it again we'll start with 4 tablespoons. So that'd be a total of 12 tablespoons. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Stir it up just a little bit. Get the salt wet so it dissolves. Try not to get cabbage up on the sides of your bucket because we want it all to be underwater. I'm going to taste it. That's better. I taste the salt. I think that it's going to be exactly what we need. I'm not going to put any more salt. So that was a total of 12 tablespoons of salt to 3 heads of cabbage, which equaled 2 of these. So that's 8 quarts. You writing this down? I hope you are. Anyway, to get it to go under the water, I'm just going to use a dinner plate. I mean, it's going to act as a weight. And so I'm going to put it down, face down. I don't know why it's what people do. So face down and let it go. It doesn't, there's still some that's floating around on top. And it's okay. As long as there's enough water in here, you're going to be fine. Now, if we were using this jar, like I said, this one doesn't have a seal ring on it, and it will let air in and out. Well, I don't have that luxury with a bucket. But I do have a bucket with a hole in it because I have this handy dandy little bubbler. It's called an airlock, and it's amazing. You get it online, Amazon, just look up fermentation bubbler or ferment airlock, whatever. We're going to put the lid on, pop it down, just like that, so that it's good and secure. There is still oxygen in the bucket. I don't have anything to get the oxygen out with. So it's fine because I put the weight on to keep the cabbage under the water level. Now I'm going to stick this on. But first, I have to put some water in it. Because what's going to happen? More science, y'all. Sorry, it's a science test. Well, it's not a test. It's just class. The microbes are going to start breaking down the cabbage. They're releasing lactic acid. It's fascinating if you read up on it, the whole process. I'm just telling you that the little creatures are going to chew on the cabbage, break it down a little bit, and they release acid, lactic gas. The gas is going to escape through the bubbler. So all it is it's a rubber stopper. It's this little plastic piece that has, well, another little tube in there, and this covers the little tube, just like that. I'm just going to put water in here. Whee! My stopper fell off. Put it back on. And then I'm going to put my little stopper in the hole so it seals it up. And then I'm just going to pour some water in to the line. There's a field line here. Cover him up, just like that. And he doesn't float exactly, but over time, when the acids start breaking down and the gas is released, this little bubbler is going to start going up and down because the gases are escaping and it's not letting any more oxygenated air into the bucket. It's all escaping because this little plastic thing has little breathing holes. So the gas is going to form, the bubbles are going to come up through the spout, up through here, it's going to come out, escape, and go into the universe and leave the acid in here to break down the cabbage, turn it into sauerkraut, and we're all going to be happy. Now, this process is not immediate, but it doesn't take forever either. I prefer a 5 to 7 day ferment. That simply means that I would leave it sitting on the kitchen counter in a dark place, no direct sunlight. Room temperature in my house right now is about 72 degrees because it's summertime and I hate hot, so I like to stay cool. This would probably take about, I'm going to check it at every stage and video it so you will see exactly what we're dealing with, and I'm going to show you this working. But today all I can do is put everything together, put the bubbler on, and set it in a room that is nice and dark and cool and let it go. So it probably won't start to do anything for a couple of days, but as soon as it does start working, I'm going to refill so you can see everything that's going on. And then at the end of 7 days, we're going to taste it to see where it is in the ferment, and I'll tell you if it needs to go another day or two. Once you put it in the refrigerator to keep it, the ferment slows way down. And that's good because I don't like it to get past a certain point. That's why I put it in the cold, because the cold stops the ferment process. Not completely, but it slows it way down. And it doesn't last very long in our house anyway because Brad loves it. My niece Anika loves it. My sister Christy loves it. And my daddy loves it. So everybody loves to eat this sauerkraut, but nobody wants to make it but me. So, shocker! Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this first part of the video. I'm going to follow up with the next part over the next few days. So I'll be in touch. Okay, today is day 5 since I put the kraut in the bucket so that fermentation could start. I've been keeping an eye on it, and truth be told, this particular bucket was probably overkill because I only had 3 heads of cabbage. A bucket this size could easily accommodate 6 or 7 nice size heads of cabbages. So this bucket was a little bit too big for the job as far as being able to watch it work, because when it starts the lacto ferment and the gases start releasing from the cabbage and from the little microbes that are feeding on the cabbage and on the sugars, I should be able to see the little bubbles perking. I haven't seen much action simply because there's a lot of dead space inside this bucket. So if it had been filled up to about this mark, then after 5 days, I would have seen a lot of gas release from this little gauge. I've been noticing it a little bit, but truth be told, this bucket was just too big for the job. It still works, but not to be able to see it in action. So let's go ahead and take a look. Normally, if I'm using a smaller crock, I'll check it every 2 days. I checked this after day 3, and it is coming along nicely, but I decided that I needed to line the interior with saran wrap, or at least a layer, before I put my plate down, because I was noticing that not all of the cabbage was underwater. And that's so important. We want to keep everything under the water level so that no mold or bacteria actually starts to grow on the surface. That's a bad sign. So I'm going to take this off. You can see it's just a big double sheet of saran wrap. I'm going to put it back on this side. And now I'm going to get a spoon. We're going to check the kraut. It smells heavenly. And you can see that bubble action here? It looks a little bit like foam. That's exactly what we want to see. That means that those microbes are working. They're releasing the gas. They're eating the sugar. This is changing into wonderful sauerkraut or just a cabbage ferment. Just depends on what you want to call it. Now, like I said earlier, I generally let my cabbage go for 7 days when it's sitting on the counter. I'm going to taste this and see where we are at day number 5. Just grab a little bit here. Oh yeah, it smells good and strong. It smells like kraut. We're almost there. I still am going to let it go for 2 more days because the level of sourness is not quite where I want it to be. And that's the wonderful thing about making your own stuff. You get to gauge it. Now, it's considerably salty. I probably could have held off on a couple of those teaspoons of salt, but it's not too salty, and it's just as crunchy as can be. Let me see if you can hear me crunching on it. Hear that? It's awesome. Anyway, what I'm going to do is put the plastic back on top, just like this, so that all the sides are covered, so that when I put my plate on it, it puts everything underwater. And there my plate's all spread out. Goes back in the bucket. Yeah, it's made a seal. Everything is looking good. I'm going to take this off the sides because I don't like for it to be a whole lot of cabbage on the sides, because then it could form mold. So I'm going to put the lid back on. I'm going to stick it back in my nice, cool guest room where it's been perking along. Stick my gauge here back on. And I want to check it in another 2 days. So I'll be back. Okay, y'all. It is day 7 of the ferment. I'm ready to check it. Because usually when I made this in the past, a 7-day ferment is plenty of time to get that sourness and the crunch that I like. So let's check it. Ooh, yeah. Smells like a ferment. It's very briny smelling. It smells, you can smell the sour. It doesn't smell like anything is spoiled though, and that's the big thing. If you were to notice a real rank smell coming off your ferment, that would be an indicator that it's not going to be good to eat. So use your sniffer. But my sniffer's telling me that this stuff is good. So let's go in. And remember I told you, let me see if I can tilt this over. We don't want to have a lot of cabbage sticking to the side of the bowl when we put our plastic wrap on. We want to scrape everything down to the base here and then cover it with that plastic wrap and kind of press down until all the air comes out. Because oxygen is not your friend in fermenting. Because if something oxidizes, that means that it's open to lots more than just air. So do what I do. All right, here goes. I'm going in. And since it's mine, I'm going to use my fingers. Game on. That's good. It has wonderful crunch because I know you can hear it. The salt. Remember I said the other day that it was a little heavy on salt? The salt is still there. But I'll get over it. It's going to be fine. I think it has enough of the ferment flavor that I'm looking for that I'm just going to consider this a done deal. So now, really all I'm going to do is take a container like this glass jar. And I'm just going to, well, I'm going to put my little funnel on. Just makes it a little easier not to get everything everywhere. And I'm going to transfer it over just like this. And when I get it filled up to the top, or however much I want to put in this jar, I'm going to pour some liquid on, and then I'll seal it up and I'll put it in the refrigerator. And remember I told you that the ferment is going to slow down when it gets put in the fridge, just because the microbes that we're working with in this lactobacillus kind of fermentation, they don't do so good in the cold. So they're going to start slowing down. They're going to sleep. They're not going to be working at all. Maybe a little bit. Anyway, that's basically it, y'all. I'm just going to keep on putting this kraut in this crock. It's not really a crock, it's a glass jar. But you get the idea. And I'll fill it up and pour the water on. And I can use it when I want it. What's this good for? Well, let me tell you. As I sniff my nose here. If you have tummy troubles, any kind of microorganism-based ferment like this lactobacillus one is going to help the probiotics in your gut. It's going to help regulate. It's going to help keep you regular. It's going to just make you feel better overall. You can put this on a hot dog. You can fry some up in a pan with onion. You can just eat it. My husband sits on the couch with a bowl of it. He'll just eat and eat. It's just that good. And it's addictive and you're going to love it and you're going to want to make it. And it's not hard. So don't be lazy. You can do this. You don't have to have a giant bucket like this either. You can have a small container. I've even done it in this container. And it works just fine, y'all. If you just want to start out with one head of cabbage, it's perfectly fine. You would just bring your salt way down. Because I think I use like 12 tablespoons in all of this. So you'd want to come way down to maybe 3 tablespoons for one big head of cabbage. Anyway, I hope you've learned something. And I hope that it's kind of taken a little bit of the scare factor out of doing a ferment. Because, well, heck, anybody can do one. And you just need to leave it on the counter and let it do its job. This is one situation where you don't have much to do except get the stuff together and put it in a bucket. I'm going to leave everything over at jamieteachmetocook.com. I'm going to have the instructions. I'm going to have a blog post. I'm going to have photographs. It's going to be the whole 9 yards just so you can see the easy steps. And get back to me. Let me know what you think. Drop me a line at jamiebake706@gmail.com. That would be fabulous if I could hear from you. You can catch me over on Facebook. You can see my write-up at Pinterest. And please come see me at Instagram at Jamie Teach Me to Cook. I love to hear from you guys, so drop me a line. See you later. Get to fermenting.